The stranger's hand moved first, reaching not for a weapon, but for the stale bread Ketil had placed beside him. Ketil Hollow-Net watched the man eat. The villagers had given him that name as a jest, for in 20 winters of fishing, he had never pulled a full catch from the fjord. His nets came up torn. His hooks came up empty. His father had been a great fisherman. His grandfather, greater still. But Ketil was the hollow one. The man who tried and failed. The man whose wife had left him for a trader from the south. The man whose own village pitied more than respected. Yet here he was, kneeling on the cold shore at dawn, feeding a dying stranger. He had found the man tangled in the rocks where the tide retreated, more dead than alive. His armor was shattered. His body bore wounds that should have killed him 3 times over, a gash across his ribs, a puncture beneath his shoulder, and burns along his left arm that spoke of Greek fire. Companions. Just a single warrior, abandoned by the sea. The village elder, old Thornvik, had warned Ketil to leave him. That man carries death with him, Thornvik had said, his clouded eyes fixed on the stranger's face. I have seen that look before. That is not a man who washes ashore. That is a man the sea itself tried to drown and failed. But Ketil had never been able to walk away from suffering. Perhaps it was because he knew suffering so intimately himself. Perhaps it was because his mother, before she died, had told him that the measure of a man was not in what he gained, but in what he gave when he had nothing left to give. So he gave what little he had: bread, salted fish, fresh water from the stream. The stranger ate in silence. His eyes, pale gray, like winter ice, watched Ketil with an intensity that made the fisherman uncomfortable. There was intelligence there, calculation, and something else. Something that looked almost like shame. You should not have helped me, the stranger finally spoke. His voice was a ruin, scraped raw by salt and screaming. You do not know what you have done. I have fed a hungry man, Ketil replied simply. That is all. No. The stranger shook his head slowly. You have fed Grimvald Red-Hand. And by morning, you will curse the day you showed me mercy. Ketil knew that name. Everyone knew that name. Grimvald Red-Hand, the butcher of Kolpang. The man who had burned 17 villages in a single summer. The jarl who had betrayed his own king for foreign gold. Then slaughtered the foreign lords who paid him when they outlived their usefulness. Songs were sung of his cruelty. Mothers invoked his name to frighten children into obedience. And Ketil had just given him bread. Why tell me this? Ketil asked, his voice steady despite the cold dread pooling in his stomach. Why not let me believe you were just another shipwrecked soul? Grimvald's laugh was bitter, broken. Because I am tired of lies. I have lied my whole life, to my men, to my enemies, to myself. I told myself the killing was necessary, that power justified everything, that the gods favored the strong. He looked down at his ruined hands, scarred and trembling. Now I cannot even hold a sword. The gods have answered my arrogance. Ketil should have walked away then. He should have returned to his empty hut, his empty nets, his empty life, and pretended this night had never happened. Instead, he asked, what comes by morning? Grimvald's eyes lifted to the horizon, where the first pale light of dawn was beginning to bleed across the sky. Vengeance, he said. 100 ships, sworn to erase me from this world. I escaped them at sea, killed their scouts, but they will follow. They always follow. He met Ketil's gaze. Leave me here to die, fisherman. Take your people and flee inland. What comes for me will not spare anyone who stands in its path. Ketil looked at this broken monster. This legend of blood and fire, reduced to begging a nobody for mercy, and he made his choice. You will not die on this shore, Ketil said. Not tonight. He helped Grimvald to his feet, draping the larger man's arm over his thin shoulders, and together they limped toward the village. Behind them, the sun crested the eastern mountains, and on the horizon, 100 dragon-proud ships emerged from the morning mist. Before we continue, if you want to discover how Ketil will face this impossible threat, leave your like and subscribe. You won't want to miss what comes next. The warning bells rang before Ketil reached the village gates. Children screamed. Women gathered what they could carry. Men who had never lifted more than fishing spears suddenly scrambled for rusted swords and axes that had hung untouched for generations. Ketil's village, Skarhavn, they called it, the wounded harbor, had not seen war in 40 years. They were fishermen, craftsmen, traders of wool and dried cod. They had no walls, no warriors, no hope against what was coming. Elder Thornvik met Ketil at the center of the village, his ancient face twisted with fury. "You fool," he spat. "You absolute fool. You brought him here. You brought the Red-Hand into our homes. He was dying. He should have died." Thornvik's voice cracked. "Do you see those ships, boy? Do you see what your mercy has summoned? That fleet belongs to Jarl Eirik Bloodborne, whose father Grimvald murdered at the Feast of Broken Oaths. 20 years Eirik has hunted this man. 20 years of burning every village that sheltered him, every ship that carried him, every person who spoke his name with anything less than hatred." Ketil felt the weight of Grimvald against his shoulder. The infamous warlord had lost consciousness during the walk, his body finally surrendering to its wounds. He was breathing, but barely. "We can give him to them," someone shouted from the crowd. "Hand over the Red-Hand and beg for mercy." A murmur of agreement rippled through the villagers. Ketil saw the fear in their eyes, the desperate calculations of people who had everything to lose and nothing to fight with. "That will not save you," the voice came from Grimvald. His eyes had opened, bloodshot and dim, but aware. "Eirik does not want justice," Grimvald continued, each word an effort. "He wants legend. He has built his entire reputation on being the man who will destroy me and everything I ever touched. If you surrender me, he will kill me slowly while you watch. Then he will burn your village anyway, so the skalds can sing of his thoroughness." A wet cough shook his frame. "I know this because it is what I would have done. What I did do to others." "Then what?" a woman cried. "What are we supposed to do?" Grimvald closed his eyes. "Flee, scatter into the mountains. Let him have the empty village and my corpse. It is the only chance you have." "No," Ketil surprised himself with the firmness in his voice. "We will not run." Every face turned to him, the hollow-netted fisherman, the village disappointment, the man who had never succeeded at anything in his life. He could see their disbelief, their pity, their anger. "You have no right to make that choice for us," Thornvik said coldly. "This is your doing, Ketil. You brought this upon us with your foolish kindness. Your bleeding heart has doomed us all. Perhaps." Ketil gently lowered Grimvald to the ground, then stood to face his people. "But I have watched this village my whole life. I have watched us bow to every trader who cheated us, every jarl who taxed us, every storm that took our boats. I have watched us survive by shrinking, by hiding, by accepting that we are small and weak and unworthy of anything more." He pointed to the horizon, where the ships were growing larger by the minute. "Those men out there, they expect us to run. They expect us to cower. They have never met resistance from a fishing village. They have never imagined that people like us might stand, because we cannot," Thornvik roared. "We are not warriors." "Neither was I, until this morning." Ketil looked at the dying man at his feet. "He gave us a warning. He told us the truth when lies would have been easier. That is more honor than he has shown anyone in 20 years. Maybe that deserves something more than abandonment. You are asking us to die for a monster." "No," Ketil shook his head. "I am asking you to fight for yourselves, for your homes, for the chance to be something more than victims." He drew a breath. "I am asking you to believe that maybe, just maybe, a village of hollow nets and broken boats can do what no one expects. Silence. The ships drew closer. The morning sun climbed higher. Then, slowly, a young man stepped forward. Tomas, the blacksmith's son, barely 17. He picked up a fishing spear. "I would rather die standing than live running," he said. One by one, others followed. The first boats made shore by midday. Eirik Bloodborne did not come with his full fleet. That would have been wasteful. And the Bloodborne was nothing if not efficient. He sent 30 men in 3 longboats, enough to secure a fishing village, capture the Red-Hand, and prepare the coast for the main force. What he did not expect was the welcome they received. The villagers had spent the morning preparing. Fishing nets, soaked in oil, stretched between the dock posts. Trenches dug across the beach and filled with sharpened stakes hidden beneath sand. Boats overturned to create barriers. It was not a fortress. It was barely a defense. But it was something. When the first warriors leaped from their ships, 3 of them found spikes through their feet before they had taken to steps. The screaming began. Ketil watched from behind an overturned hull, a fishing spear clutched in his trembling hands. He had never killed a man. He had never even struck one in anger. But as a blood-soaked raider rounded the barrier, axe raised high, Ketil did not think. He simply moved. The spear caught the man in the throat, and Ketil felt the resistance, the horrible intimacy of taking a life. The raider fell. Ketil vomited. But he did not stop fighting. The first assault broke against their improvised defenses. 7 raiders dead, 2 captured, the rest retreating to their ships. The villagers had lost 4, including old Thornvik, who had taken up a sword despite his blindness and died cursing Grimvald's name. Yet they had held. Somehow, impossibly, they had held. Will not last, Grimvald side. He had regained enough strength to sit upright, propped against the wall of the Great Hall where the wounded were being tended. Ketil stood over him, still covered in another man's blood, still shaking. "Eirik will not underestimate you twice," Grimvald continued. "The next wave will be overwhelming. He will burn everything and salt the earth. Then why are you still here?" "Ketil demanda crowdwifar. Found a boat. Escaped while we died for you." Grimvald was silent for a long moment. 30 years ago, he finally said, "I was a boy in a village like this one. We were attacked by raiders. My father tried to negotiate, offered them everything we had if they would spare the women and children." His voice grew hollow. "They took everything, then they killed everyone anyway. My father, my mother, my sisters. I survived because I hid beneath the bodies of my family and did not move for 2 days." Ketil said nothing. "I swore I would never be weak again. Never be the one who begged. I built myself into something that could never be hurt by hurting everyone else first." Grimvald looked at his ruined hands. "I became worse than the men who destroyed my family. I told myself it was strength. It was just cowardice with a sharper blade. Why tell me this now?" "Because you asked why I am still here." Grimvald met his eyes. "I am here because you showed me something I had forgotten existed. You had nothing, no power, no advantage, no reason to help me, and you helped me anyway. Not because you were strong, because you were good." He struggled to his feet, swaying but standing. "I have spent my life believing that goodness was weakness, that mercy was foolishness, that the only truth was blood and iron." He took a shaky breath. "I do not want to die believing that anymore. I do not want my last act to be running while good people burn for my sins." Ketil stared at this broken man, this monster, this legend, this frightened boy who had never stopped hiding beneath his family's bodies. "What can you do?" Ketil asked. "You can barely stand." Grimvald smiled, and for the first time, it reached his eyes. "I can give Eirik what he actually wants. A death worthy of his legend." He gripped Ketil's shoulder. "But el Juanlas Chimi." One last act of foolish mercy. Outside, horns bellowed from the fleet. The second wave was coming. What would you do in Ketil's place? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if you haven't liked yet, now's the time. The plan was madness. Grimvald admitted as much. Eirik has waited 20 years to kill me himself, he explained as they worked. His entire identity depends on being the one who ends the Red Hand. If I give him the chance for single combat, a formal duel, witnessed by his men and your people, his pride will not let him refuse. And when he kills you, Ketil asked, then his legend is complete. He has no reason to destroy the village. The story he wanted, the glorious end to his 20-year hunt, is finished. Grimvald winced as he tested his grip on a borrowed sword. His hands were too weak to hold it properly. The skalds will sing of his victory. Your people will live. Everyone gets what they need, except you. I get what I deserve. Grimvald's voice was steady. I have killed hundreds. Ketil, innocents. Children, people who showed me the same kindness you did, and I repaid them with fire. If my death buys the lives of your village, it will be the only good thing I have done in 30 years. Ketil wanted to argue. He wanted to find another way, some clever solution that did not end with this broken man dying on the sand. But he was a fisherman, not a tactician. He knew nets and tides, and the way the fish moved through the deep water. He did not know how to save everyone. Sometimes he was beginning to understand you could not save everyone. Sometimes you could only choose who survived. They sent the message at dusk. A captured raider released with Grimvald's terms. Single combat at dawn. The Red Hand against the Bloodborne. Winner takes all. The answer came within the hour. A single word you carved into the messenger's forehead before he was sent back. Yes, that night. While the village prepared for what might be their last sunrise, Ketil sat with Grimvald in the great hall. The warlord was sharpening a blade he could barely lift, the rasping of stone on steel filling the silence. I had a son once, Grimvald said suddenly. Did you know that? Halfdan, I named him. After my father, the sharpening stopped. He was 7 when he died. Fever took him. I was away raiding, gathering gold and glory, and I came home to a grave. I am sorry. His mother never forgave me. She was right not to. Grimvald resumed his work. I told myself I was building something for him, a legacy, an empire, but I was just running. Running from the boy under the bodies. Running from the father who came home too late. His voice cracked. I have been running my whole life. Ketil. Tomorrow, I finally stop. Ketil had no words of comfort. What comfort could he offer a man who had done such things? What absolution was his to give? But he could offer presence. He could sit with a dying man in the darkness and let him speak the truths he had carried alone for decades. Sometimes that was enough. Ketil, Grimvald looked up. When this is over, if you survive, the people will need someone to lead them. Someone they trust. Someone who does not rule through fear. I am no leader. I cannot even catch fish. You caught something more important. Grimvald smiled faintly. You caught a village that was ready to run and taught them to stand. You caught a monster and reminded him he was once a man. He set down the blade. They call you Hollow-Net now. But after tomorrow, they will call you something else. What? That depends on you. Grimvald rose, steadier now, as if the approaching death had given him strength. I go to face my end. What you do with the life I buy, that is your choice. He walked to the door of the great hall, pausing at the threshold. Thank you, he said without turning, for the bread, for their fish, for seeing something worth saving in a man who had forgotten it existed. He stepped into the night. I will not waste your gift. The door closed behind him. Ketil sat alone in the empty hall, listening to the distant sound of waves, and wondered what kind of man he would be when the sun rose. Dawn broke gray and cold. The villagers gathered on the shore, silent, watching. Across the sand, Eirik Bloodborne's warriors formed a wall of shields and iron, their eyes hungry for the spectacle they had waited 20 years to witness. Eirik himself was a giant of a man, taller than any warrior Ketil had ever seen, with arms like ship masts and a beard braided with the finger bones of his enemies. He carried a massive war axe, its blade etched with runes that promised death. Grimvald, by contrast, looked like a corpse that had forgotten to fall. He walked slowly onto the sand between the armies, each step a victory against his failing body. The sword in his hand seemed too heavy. His wounds had reopened, leaving a trail of blood behind him, yet he stood, red-hand. Eirik's voice boomed across the beach. "At last, do you know how long I have dreamed of this moment? Long enough to make it your entire identity." Grimvald's voice was steady, even amused. "I almost feel sorry for you, Bloodborne, when I am what you have left. Well, without me to chase." Eirik's face twisted with rage. He charged without warning, axe sweeping in an arc that would have cut a normal man in half. Grimvald did not try to block. He simply stepped aside, barely, letting the blade whisper past his chest. Then he moved not with the strength of a healthy warrior, but with the precision of a man who had been killing for 30 years and knew exactly where to place a blade. The sword opened a cut across Eirik's forearm, shallow, almost insulting. The duel continued. Ketil watched, transfixed, as the two men circled each other. Eirik had power, rage, everything a warrior could want, but Grimvald had something else. He had acceptance. He was not fighting to win. He was not fighting to survive. He was fighting to show these people, his enemies, his victims, the village that had sheltered him, that even a monster could choose how his story ended. The end came swiftly. Eirik's axe finally connected, burying itself in Grimvald's side. The warlord fell to his knees, blood pouring onto the sand. But as Eirik raised his weapon for the killing blow, Grimvald looked up and smiled. "Your father begged, you know," he whispered. "At the Feast of Broken Oaths, he wept and pleaded for his life. I killed him anyway." Eirik screamed and brought the axe down. Grimvald's sword came up at the same moment. Both fell. Eirik Bloodborne died with Grimvald's blade through his heart, the Red-Hand's final kill. Grimvald died with an axe in his skull, finally paying the price for 30 years of blood. Silence. Total, absolute silence. Then the raiders' shield wall began to fracture. Without Eirik, without their purpose, they were just men far from home with no reason to fight. Their captains argued. Their formations broke. By noon, the fleet was withdrawing, their 20-year crusade ending not with victory, but with a hollow, mutual destruction. The village had survived. Ketil walked to where Grimvald lay. The warlord's eyes were open, staring at the gray sky. There was something like peace in them. "We will bury him," Ketil said to the villagers who had gathered behind him. "Not as a monster, not as a legend. As a man who, in the end, chose to be something better. He does not deserve," someone began. "None of us deserve mercy." Ketil turned to face them. "That is why it matters when we give it anyway." They built a pyre that night. On the shore, where Ketil had found a dying stranger and made a choice that changed everything, they sang no songs of glory. They told no tales of conquest. They simply let the fire carry Grimvald Red-Hand into the sky. In the weeks that followed, the village rebuilt. And when traders came, asking who led Skarhav now, the people pointed to the thin fisherman with the empty nets and the full heart. "Ketil," they said. "Ketil Mercy Giver." He had earned the name by feeding a dying monster. He would spend the rest of his life proving it meant something more. And so ends the saga of Ketil Mercy Giver and Grimvald Red-Hand. If you enjoyed this journey, leave a like, subscribe, and click the video on your screen for another saga. See you next time.